Celtics Beat is brought to you by Fanduel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
What's up, everyone? Hello, Celtics Beat, and you've got a... So Evan presented this as like the OG crew, which, I mean, there's some truth to. We've been around for a long time. We've done this show for a long time. I think if we were truly of the OG crew, we'd have to bring Larry Russell in with us, see what he's up to.
We have to get Larry and Nick in here, but this is
gotta get Chelsea and Jared Weiss. He was part of it in terms of hosting for a while.
Yeah, this is his. I guess this is as OG as it gets right now, though. I think
this is modern OG.
Yeah, but we have done, to our credit, we have done more shows than anybody else in the history of this show,
and the best ones.
That's not even debatable. Debatable. I love Jared Weiss to death. He's a terrific person, but our show's
love them all, and love to have Jared on as a guest. We just prefer the two of us when we're rocking the host chair, which is great. We love doing the show. We love having you guys with us. By all means, if you have not already, check out the podcast in its wherever. I mean, you might be watching us on the CLNS YouTube page. You can always, of course, go just the audio route if you're in the car or walking your dog like Ev does, or whatever you're out there doing. You can subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and of course, rate, review, all of that good stuff. It is very much appreciated. But this is an interesting time of year. We're in the ramp up, obviously, to training camp, which is right around the corner, and then we'll get into exhibition games, real games, and on with just the usual season ups and downs and drama and controversy and injuries and everything else. But right now, it's I think it's a really good example of people in general, people kind of trying to fill time and get your clickbait headlines and figure out what's what and speculate on things that honestly we don't really know about. And for the Celtics, who have in many ways gone viral over the past week since our last show, we have upset the apple cart a little bit. This show, we had Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe with us last week, and he dropped a little nugget that Malcolm Brogdon may or may not be all too pleased with the Celtics. That at one point in time, at the very least, he was pissed about being included in trade rumors. And honestly, nobody's heard from Brogdon since. So we don't know if he's still pissed, if he's over it, if it's all been worked out with Brad Stevens and company behind the scenes. We just do not know. And Gary said as much when I asked him about it. We do not know because we've not heard from Malcolm, and it definitely makes, the media day all that much more interesting when he gets up there. And so we will find out. But this has taken on a life of its own in all of the different articles that get aggravated. They're aggravated. There have been segments locally, whether it's NBC Sports Boston, the talk shows, ESPN has done segments about it, The Ringer, on and on. Like it all comes. We always joke around here. Celtics beat always first. Also, all comes back to CB over here, Ev, and this has been a talking point. But my question is, just to kind of start us off, is, has it gotten out of control? Has it gotten out of hand? Is it just people weighing in on something that honestly nobody knows anything about? Because again, no one's heard from Malcolm.
Yeah, it's definitely gone out of control, without question. I mean, when you go from, and I'm not trying to say like our podcast is this ginormous behemoth of a podcast, nor am I saying are we just inconsequential at all. I think we're in a really good spot where we are, but it was really kind of fun and a little humbling, to be honest with you, to watch everybody just run with this story right after we let it out. And it was like listening back on it, I knew, I was like right away, I'm like, well, this is going to be an easy one to figure out what the title is, because I mean, your face, I don't know if you watched it. I go back and look and I listen, and your face because I made a mistake. I made a journalistic mistake. I went on to a different topic after Gary dropped the original sentence of and Malcolm's still pissed. And I just went on to Jason Tatum's wrist, like that didn't happen. And you were like, hold on a minute, we gotta reel this thing back in here. What did you just say? So we got we clarified a little bit. And just everybody, aggregated by this person, all of a sudden, 98.5, ABC Sports Boston, and ESPN's whatever NBA program they have now, everybody's jumping with this. And I think because we haven't heard from Malcolm himself, we can just basically come up with any scenario that we want to paint whatever narrative we want to paint for the discussion. The truth of the matter is nobody knows anything because Malcolm hasn't said anything. Again, we have these people on our show, Adam. Always pay attention to certain people that are on the Celtics beat. That's why this show is called Celtics Beat. That's why we have the best writers on this show, so we can talk to them about stuff. Like if it comes from Gary or if it comes from Adam Himmelsbach or, back in the day, Steve Bopet. I would still include Steve in there because Steve's pretty plugged in still. There are certain guys and certain girls. I will also throw the female perspective in here too. Like when they have something from the Celtics, it's legit. And so like as you watch certain people spin this, it's like you really got nothing. None of you have anything. We're all just speculating, and it has turned into a monster. And at the end of the day, I just sort of kind of feel bad for Malcolm because a lot of people are just putting words in his mouth that don't really exist.
Well, it's not even just what happened here with what Gary said, pissed about the being included in the trade, which, by the way, I would totally believe. Like, that doesn't mean that Malcolm Brogdon is not, over it or doesn't understand the business or, it's just like, hey, I was just there for a year. I played well. I was the, sixth man of the year. I think we're building something here. You're going to throw me in trade talks? Like, yeah, that would aggravate anybody. I wouldn't blame him in the least. But let's not, you got to separate the two. You can understand something and be ticked about it on two different sides and then just kind of get over it and move forward because all right, it fell through. Like your name came up in trade talks. More than that, they tried to trade you. Injury concerns made it fall apart and you're back. And so you get your crap together and you just one foot in front of the other. And Malcolm Brogdon seems like, by all indications, the consummate professional. So what is kind of funny to me is that it goes to another level where you have like Ramona Shelburne on ESPN saying, well, maybe it wasn't just the trade stuff. I'm hearing that he's pissed about the way the team handled his injury. Well, how? Like by effectively kind of shutting him down late in the playoffs for the last couple of games? Like, was he going to keep playing through it, being remarkably ineffective? So I find it, I don't want to doubt her reporting. I don't even know her. I know obviously she's successful out there, but I find it hard to believe that Malcolm Brogdon would be upset with the team for putting an inferior product on the floor that includes him when he is not himself. And he knows that. There was a debate over whether or not he needed surgery in the offseason. Being out there on the floor, as opposed to chasing a championship. I think he understands the way the world works in this respect. So I don't even know that it's fair to say that he was ticked about that. But putting all of that aside, I want to read a little passage here from Adam Himmelsbach's article. You mentioned Adam before. He is as good as there is on the Celtics beat right now. When he writes, you listen, which is why he does not do a lot of interviews, by the way, because he doesn't like to get caught up in all the hot takey stuff. He's a journalist. He puts the facts out there and what he's heard and what the reporting is. And we love that he comes on with us from time to time. Here's what he wrote. The Celtics social media team has posted plenty of pictures and videos of these workouts, players in Boston's arrival, all and on. There's been no sign of guard Malcolm Brogdon. Brogdon, of course, was hampered by a forearm strain during the conference finals last year. Then in June, part of the first iteration of the Kristaps Porzingis trade that before that deal crumbled, Marcus Smart ended up in the 3-team transaction instead. Brogdon and his camp have been quiet this summer. Members of the Celtics front office have mostly avoided or deflected questions about the sixth man of the year. Something about the situation just feels off. But the indications I've gotten are that the Celtics are not considering trading Brogdon any more than they are considering trading any other player. His sour ending to last year aside, it is worth remembering Brogdon's value to the Celtics last year, and Smart's departure figures to only increase his role. Media Day is scheduled for October 2nd, which, as we sit here, is 10, 11 days away, and there will be some clarity then. So I think a very important line that he included in that. Indications I've gotten that the Celtics are not considering trading Brogdon any more than they are considering trading any other player, which tells you Malcolm Brogdon still very much could be traded. I have heard some whispers that the Celtics are still trying to trade him. I am not saying my reporting is any better than Adam Himmelsbach's. In fact, I will tell you the opposite. It is very much inferior to Adam Himmelsbach's. However, I have been saying for weeks, for months, ever since this trade fell apart, do not be surprised if the fallout from this situation or potential fallout still leads to Malcolm Brogdon being traded. I still believe it, even though we were sitting here in late September. I still believe Malcolm Brogdon is maybe not actively, being, dangled out there by the Celtics, but I think he is absolutely on the trade block. I firmly believe that. Where I think it is now more limiting, Ev, and I've talked about this too, is that now you can't just up and move him. You have to get a piece back that is a contributor and a guard. You need a guard back, or you got to get a guard elsewhere because you are thin at guard as it is after trading Marcus Smart. You cannot now trade Malcolm Brogdon and get a wing back. I just don't believe that's, in terms of roster construction, that's something that you can do.
Snap into action this NFL season with Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining Fanduel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. Fanduel, official partner of the NFL.
You have an open roster spot left, but I want to save that particular tidbit for later. I want to ask you a question about that particular paragraph, or a couple of paragraphs there from Himmelsbach. I know we have said on this show already that we all kind of ran with this without really any reporting, but in Himmelsbach's piece, does any part of that make you think that Malcolm still isn't pissed? Because the way that reads to me is we haven't heard anything from Malcolm, and it's kind of a bad thing that we haven't heard. Like, we haven't heard anything from him at all. I
don't think it reads that it's a bad thing. I think it reads that
it comes off to me a little bit.
Malcolm's pissed, but we don't know Malcolm's not pissed. We just don't know. I think that's how it reads.
Okay.
Therefore, I feel like it's Adam saying, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Malcolm Brogdon is pissed off.
Or not.
Right. Exactly.
We don't know.
I think it's very carefully worded to say as much.
Right. And I think Adam, if we had him on the show, would tell you that it doesn't indicate literally anything. And that's the one thing that's Adam is very, and even when he's on here with us, we're going to have Adam on hopefully later on the next couple of weeks or so. But he's always very careful about how he words and phrases things. And again, that reads to me like there might be a little something still there. But again, at the same time, we have no idea. And the phrase of they're not thinking about trading him any less than anybody else on the roster. Well, we all know how the NBA works. That doesn't mean anything. I mean, the only guy that's truly untradeable on the roster is Jason Tatum. So, pretty much everybody's up for grabs if the price is right. And if somebody were to call, or if Brad were to call someone and somebody was interested and they were interested in the same package, like, yeah, then things are going to get done. But I honestly don't think, because of this elbow injury, there would have to be certain things in place for another team to trade for Brogdon. I mean, we have no idea how that rehab is going, how that injury has progressed, and how it's healed over time. We have no clue. And maybe that's on purpose. You go back to like the Last Dance, right? Scottie Pippen didn't play until like halfway through the year because he was mad at the team for not giving him an extension, and he had his injury that held him out for the majority of the year, right? And it created a little dissension amongst the team. I'm not saying that Malcolm Brogdon is Scottie Pippen here, but I'm saying that, they have gone radio silent when a little bit of communication would do a whole lot of good to clear some things up. And it's not like Malcolm's not a pro and his team doesn't understand the value of using the media to help things out. They haven't spoken maybe for a reason, because they want the Celtics to be uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm just, again, we're speculating here. I'm throwing things out.
In that vein, what you just said, I think that, so Malcolm, to be very clear, Malcolm Brogdon doesn't owe us, the media, or fans anything. Like, Malcolm Brogdon doesn't have to say anything that goes beyond his literal team and league requirements to talk with the media. And we're not there yet. We're in the off season. But I think what you just said is interesting about whether or not, and again, we don't know. I keep saying we don't know because we don't. We don't know what level of conversation he has had within the team. And I don't mean with teammates. I mean with management, with front office, with, coaches, all of that. Has he closed the door on them? Has he, boxed them out because, again, he's upset for one reason or multiple reasons? Or are they actively in touch behind the scenes and nobody is talking about it? But what I do think, and you just alluded to this, what could be interesting is you would think with that injury, there'd be some level of rehab taking place with the team doctors in Boston. And if he has not been around at all, and I don't know this to be true, doesn't mean every time a guy is around, there needs to be a picture on the Celtics Twitter account or X account, whatever you want to call it. If he has not been around at all in months, that would be something that I would find mildly alarming.
Yeah, I think you'd be right to feel a little alarmed about that. Porzingis, everybody gave him a hard time because he was, Lithuania and not rehabbing with the Celtics. There was a time, and I thought it was really just stupid. But some people were giving him a hard time. Well, why isn't he back in Boston rehabbing with the Celtics doctors? It's like that doesn't really matter right now. Like, he's going to be back in Boston short. He is back in Boston right now. We've seen photos of him. There was one screenshot, I think, of the entire city. So I might have been taken even from the Auerbach practice center. But it's like, one of these things where he's back with the team now. That story that we were just trying to find something to talk about. Right, we had hit that time of the calendar of like, man, we're just really struggling for content here. Whereas this one varies a little differently because we haven't heard anything. Like, again, we got updates from Team Lithuania about his progress, and now that he's back in Boston working out with the team, we don't have to worry about that as much. Again, a little bit, and this is maybe where I have a little beef with Malcolm right now is just because of the lack of communication. Where this story has been out there for about a week now. Again, our podcast was last Thursday with Gary, and everybody's picked up and ran with it since. A little just blurb to the media, real quick, short paragraph, something would clear a lot of this up and would give us another talking point to have, and then we could just move on with the rest of our lives. But because we haven't had that yet, we sit here and speculate, and it's really kind of frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. Again, does he owe us that? No. Would it help some things? Sure.
Of course, he doesn't need to care about helping any of this stuff. I mean, he can show up on Media Day, October 2nd, get up there. And Malcolm, how do you feel about?
Well, that's going to be an interesting day.
Well, it's the that's the business. It's unfortunate. That's just how it works. But I'm still a Celtic, and we want to pick up where we left off, and we have unfinished business from last year, and Marcus is gone and Grant's gone. We have a new look, but we believe in our group and our leaders and our talent, and I'm excited for the year. Well, how's the forearm, elbow, all of that feeling? Healed up nicely in the off season, didn't need surgery. I'm ready to go.
Right.
That's what you're going to hear, more or less. You're not going to get any controversial nuggets come out of media. They never do, ever. I mean, unless you have a guy who is looking to be moved. Now, do we believe Malcolm Brogdon is looking to be moved? Does he want to, for instance, get back to a situation with a team where he can start regularly as opposed to being the sixth man? Maybe he's unhappy being the sixth man. I have no idea. I don't think he ever indicated that. He always said the right things about his role on the team, and I think it probably means something to win an award like that. But maybe it doesn't as much when you came from a place where you were a guy who was starting every game and, averaging 20 points a game, and you feel like you've taken a step back and you're filling a lesser role. I don't know. I've never been in that position. I will never be in that position, short of asking Malcolm Brogdon right to his face, which love to do. We're not going to get the answers to those questions about any level of discontent that he may or may not have, obviously. But I just think that as far as Media Day goes, you're going to hear nothing but the usual, the past is in the past, we're looking ahead, and I'm in the best shape of my life kind of fluff that typically comes out of Media Day.
I think Jason Tatum, though, might actually be in the best shape of his life. If you see what he's been doing, the guy's a monster.
He's staying busy.
He's like deadlifting 450 like it's nothing. He's just... I was talking to my buddy about it the other day of just, his workout routine. And again, the thing is, he's going to be able to stay lean, but still add like strength and muscle. And I'm just thrilled for what the next step is for him, because as he gets older and more mature and fills out, like, man, he's just going to be a real big problem to deal with. And, I've been saying the same thing about Jalen. Like, the thing with Jalen that has been glaringly apparent over the past couple of years is how much better he has gotten at absorbing contact and finishing through contact at the rim. People might want to complain about the dribble. Like, that's fine. Go back and watch Jalen have people bounce off him. Go back and look at last year. It was awesome.
Strong.
He's strong as hell. So those two guys, I love seeing their offseason progress and the work they put in the gym. Like Pierce was talking about it with Kevin Garnett on his show the other day about how Tatum's work ethic has gotten him back into
working out with him.
Yeah, and back into shape and like a little inspired. And like Sam Cassell's hanging out, and it feels, I don't know, like some of the vibes on this team are like kind of toxic and terrible when it comes to like the Brogdon stuff. But then there's some really good vibes around this team that I really enjoy. And like just like the one thing, they had that interview with Pierce and Garnett and Smart and Brown and Tatum, I think mid-season last year. And one of the things that they talked about with Joe and I think with Brad, I think maybe with Joe, but maybe not. It was with one of the two of them, was how they think they need to be around the team more, right? It's like, they're like, yeah, when you have Cedric Maxwell in here all the time and you have guys coming through, it really reminds you of like what you're really fighting for and like what you really put this uniform on for. And to me, it seems like Pierce has taken that and gone to the next step with it. Like, I'm going to work out with Jason because he's the next dude. Like, he's the next me, but he's going to be better than me. Like, I love that. And I love seeing that after, what has been a tough offseason for this team and 2 tough off seasons in a row. You lose in the NBA finals and everybody questions whether this team's, really good or not. You make a couple of tweaks, you come back, you lose in the Eastern Conference finals. And, it's a long summer. And I think that, trying to bring some of the past greats in here and trying to, establish that brotherhood, that camaraderie of being a Celtic, I think is a tremendous thing for this team.
Ev, any interest in news?
Any news?
Yeah.
I love news.
Yeah,
you got news?
In Celtics breaking news, just while we were talking about our fine sponsors here on the program.
I am not going to.
Durania.
What do you got?
Free agent guard forward Lamar Stevens has agreed to a deal with the Boston Celtics. Sources tell The Athletic and Stadium. Stevens established himself as a defensive presence for the Cavs starting in 25 of 62 games last season. Agent Scott Nichols completed the deal with Celtics officials. So Stevens got Stevens. Brad hasn't been too busy investing in soccer teams. He's out there still working, and he got himself Lamar Stevens. Now, we've talked about this one. It's been out there. Lamar Stevens, TJ Warren, some of the guys that have been in for workouts with the Celtics. We've been on this one for weeks. And there was even a little bit of conversation. Who would you rather? And we said, I believe anyway, go back, check the tape, but I believe these words came out of my mouth previously. Between the two, while I might have preferred TJ Warren for his offensive upside, the one that felt more likely was Lamar Stevens for his defensive ability. What do you think of this move?
I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest.
Okay, tell me more.
I just don't want time. I get why. I just really like Jordan Walsh, and I think this takes away playing time from Jordan Walsh. I think it certainly might. I get the idea. You can never have too many wings in this league, especially guys that can defend. Boston, I think, would like to try and get back to some of their defensive prowess that they had when they went to the NBA Finals. I mean, again, you and I talked about this. You, me, and Seth had a lot of conversations, surrounding how good that defense was from February till Rob got hurt. It was unbelievable. I mean, it really was. I'd like to get them to get back to that for sure. I just think Jordan Walsh, I'd like to see him get some real time. And that's
you're riding a summer league high is what you're doing.
I am, but this is the problem. Okay, so this is when you're a good team like the Celtics and you have young players on it. Sometimes you have to sacrifice wins for playing time or vice versa, playing time for wins, right? Like ask the Cavs about Moses Moody and Kuminga and the young guys that they've brought in. They traded Wiseman away after a while because he wasn't fitting in and wasn't really working out. If you go back and ask them, would you do the same thing over again? They probably wouldn't, because those guys have not brought the return back on their investment for sure. And again, you're talking about a team that had Steph Curry, Draymond, and Clay, and then added 3 rookies, and trying to make that work is really hard. Boston is in a little different of a spot than them. They have, I think, a little bit more age diversity on their team than the Warriors do. But it's still the same time, I would like the Sam Hausers, the Jordan Walshes, to get some real time. I mean, you more than me, I think, pounded the table for more Sam Hauser, not just last year, but the year prior in the playoffs, trying to get Sam Hauser some more run on the court. I feel like that's going to be me with Jordan Walsh this year. I'm so excited to see what he brings to the table when he doesn't have to be like in the summer league. It's hard. You don't know who the heck you're playing with. And, obviously his role with the Celtics with Jason Tatum over here and Jaylen Brown over here is going to be very different from when he's on the court with JD Davison and Jay Scrubb and, name the guys. So I do want to see what he looks like with some higher end talent around him and how he can be beneficial, because I think he has a little bit better feel than I think people are anticipating. That being said, look, Lamar Stevens, I had, as I said at the time, I think when they were looking at him, I have not been grinding Lamar Stevens tape. I hate to tell everybody. I'm not an expert at Lamar Stevens. From what we can gather, yes, very good defensively. Again, I believe he's one of Penn State's all-time leading scorers. If I remember correctly.
Maybe. I could not tell you if that's true or not. I tell you he went to Penn State. That is my extensive knowledge of Lamar Stevens, the college basketball player. I can tell you some of his NBA facts, which is has started 38 of 165 games. This is right from Basketball Reference. This is not off the top of my head, obviously. He's averaging just better than 5 points in about 16 minutes per. As far as shooting, he's about a 47% shooter from the field, not a 3-point shooter. He'll get him up from time to time, but only a 28% success rate. Not the most adept at the free throw line either, just over 70%. Gets his rebounds. He's getting 3.3 in those minutes. So as far as per 36, he's 10.5 points and almost 7 rebounds per 36 minutes. But I think going back to the defense, defensive win share, which of course Basketball Reference has, 1.6 last year of his overall 1.9 win share in, again, limited action. His defensive rating, 111, 110 the year before that. So it's, look, he's not a great player. He is a back half of the rotation, guy, if that. He won't even, regularly play by any means, unless there are some, games that guys are hurt or nights off, resting, whatever else. Like he's going to get himself into the lineup here and there, and maybe he'll be an energy guy off the bench. But I would kind of describe Jordan Walsh, probably the same way. So to Evan's point, could they pull from one another? Entirely possible, but neither one was bound to have a big role on this team this season anyway.
Yeah. So just so we're clear here, Lamar Stevens is 3rd all-time in points in Penn State history. It's behind Taylor Battle and Shep Gardner. Neither guys I remember really at all, to be frankly honest with you. But that's, neither here nor there. Look, I see the idea. More depth in the wing is never a bad thing, especially guys that can defend. You can never have too much shooting on the floor and too much defense. I think that's, part of the half the game is stopping the other person from getting a basket. I think that's important, especially when 2 of your high usage players are going to come on the wing, right? You're going to have to give Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum some time off from time to time, although you're going to want them to play too, because you're going to want to win games. I just don't have a huge, pound the table take for you. I think they're looking for depth.
I don't think that he comes with one, and it's not, and I think that's fine, by the way. You don't have to have these scorching hot takes on every, potential deal. This is again a back of the bench guy.
Yeah, and what's funny is I was going to bring this up in terms of Malcolm Brogdon, if they were going to trade him for not a guard and then sign a guard, to that last roster spot. There was the whole thing with Austin Rivers that came up this week on Bill Simmons' podcast about how he called Brad Stevens to tell him, like, hey, man, like, we've talked before. I'm interested in joining your squad if you got some room for me, and, hope you consider me, and et cetera, et cetera. And, Austin Rivers has been an interesting case over his years in the NBA. I mean, you remember when he was in high school, he was this ginormous recruit in high school. I mean, if you were around when mixtapes meant something, his high school mixtape was outrageous. I mean, and he went to college, he went to Duke. It was a huge deal that Austin Rivers went to Duke. And then, he's kind of bounced around a little bit, hasn't really found a footing solidly anywhere. And he talked about that. And now he feels really comfortable in being a bench guy and being a veteran who can help guys. And that's something that I'm always going to be interested in, because, there's always room for vets to teach guys, not just stuff on the court, stuff off the court too. So I was interested in the Austin Rivers thing, especially if they traded Brogdon for something else and they need to get a guard somewhere. Doesn't seem that's how this is going to go down. I think Stevens is being brought in as an extra guy to fill out the rest of the bench. This is also, unfortunately, I think the time we say bye to Blake Griffin. It's going to be tough. Let's say wait.
Yeah, I think that's likely. And our guy Greeny too, Barstool Greeny, Dan Greenberg, he's been on the show a number of times. Due to probably have him back on pretty soon. He tweeted out that it's, does this mean that Banton could be gone with that non-guaranteed contract that he has to, if they're interested in continuing to keep a roster spot open. Something to keep an eye on. Again, though, we talk about the lack of guard depth. I don't know. I figure you go into training camp, obviously, with a meaty roster and whittle it down from there. You see how guys perform, what kind of fit they might have. I think Banton's the same story. I wouldn't see him gone before camp arrives anyway.
Yeah, and just to point out the guard depth thing, and just to toot my own horn for just a second, because I've been preaching this for now the third straight year. Mm-hmm. It was so nice to hear Ramona talk about this on ESPN, because I've been pleading for this for a long time. But she had mentioned in that segment about Malcolm Brogdon that there's some thought process around the team that Jason Tatum's going to play a little more point guard this year. And I, for one, could not be more happy to hear that. I've been preaching point Tatum on the show forever. And it is something that eventually you have to find out if he can handle it or not. And I think over the last 2 years, he's done a really great job as improving as a ball handler, distributor, and facilitator. And Bobby Manning made a great point about this. How many superstars in the NBA are terrific off-ball players? I can name a couple, but there's just not a lot of them. A lot of the superstars in the league are superstars because they're terrific with the ball in their hands. Yeah. Steph Curry is one. Kevin Durant's another. Guys that you could drop them on any team and they would figure it out. They don't need the ball in their hands to make things happen. But there's just not a lot of those guys. A lot of teams are built around one player being able to have the basketball in their hands and dictate how the court looks and how the game looks and how the game's played. And if the Celtics are going to lean more into that this season, which I've been begging for 2 years, and they've kind of met me there, more of it I think is better here for Boston. I think more is better.
All right, we figured today we'd do a shorter show with just the two of us for giggles. It's been a long time, probably since the height of COVID, since Evan and I were just doing shows, the two of us. So we wanted to get back to some of our more modern day roots. But next week, we will be sure to have a guest back on with us. Very much looking forward to that. There are some people that we have been due to have on for a while that would love to start to work in as camp approaches. And obviously, as we mentioned, basketball, actual basketball, and not just stories and reports and speculation. Basketball's right around the corners. Thanks for being with us. Check out the show on wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, Apple, iTunes, if that's still a thing, Apple Podcasts, obviously, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, you name it, we're there. And we thank you for being with us. Rate, review, most importantly, subscribe. For Evan, I'm Adam. We will talk to you again real soon. Looking forward to it. And Malcolm, we want to hear from you, buddy.
With the busy fall season already in swing, you might be looking for wholesome, convenient meals for jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit, can help you fuel up fast with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. You'll save time, eat well, and stay on track with your healthy lifestyle. Too busy this fall to cook? But want to make sure you're eating well? With Factor, skip the extra trip to the grocery store and the chopping, prepping, and cleaning up too. while still getting the flavor and nutritional quality you need. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes. So all you have to do is heat and enjoy, then get back to crushing your goals. Looking for calorie-conscious options during the busy season? Try the delicious dietitian-approved Calorie Smart meals with around less than 550 calories per serving. This September, get Factor and enjoy eating well without the hassle. Simply choose your meals and enjoy fresh, flavor-packed meals delivered to your door. Ready in just 2 minutes. No prep, no mess. Head to factormeals.com/newsfeed50 and use code newsfeed50 to get 50% off. That's code newsfeed50 at factormeals.com/newsfeed50 to get 50% off.